Hello, welcome to the Crownsman Show. I am your host, Jared Downey. Joining me is Gowdy Molina. Hello, Gowdy.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I would say we could probably agree, and we never agree.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Right.
um, we could probably agree that we have not done enough agriculture,
That's right, yeah.
and Rory was not happy about that. So he has been looking for some interesting companies, and I think we have a winner. I'm pretty sure. Clean
Fabulous.
Clean Seed Capital Group. We've got their Chief Operating Officer, Colin Rush. He'll be joining the show. Their seeding technology is, well, I'm going to say incredible, but I'm also not an expert. So I spent a couple days trying to figure everything out, and I realized I'm going to need another like 2 years. So, so Colin is on the show to help us out, talk about the growth of the company, the leadership. We're going to cover a lot of ground.
Mhm.
Before we do that, Gowdy, we absolutely have to give a shout out to our sponsors.
Of course. Okay, so for this episode, we've got SolarSet. Introducing the SolarSet Fold, the new foldable frame solar system brings power to your residential and commercial property and can be shipped worldwide. Like all SolarSet products, the SolarSet Fold comes turnkey, pre-assembled, and is easily transported and installed. You can learn more about the SolarSet Fold and their full line of amazing solar systems at solarset.com. We've also got Savannah Equipment. Savannah Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can go and visit them at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. And last but not least, we've got PowerZone. When you need a specialized team of world class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems, no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com. Alrighty, that's good.
I feel like we have a very diverse group of sponsors when you're doing agriculture, and then a mining company
Yeah.
sponsoring. And but hey, that is heavy industry. It is all more connected than you think, which I think we've learned on this show.
Yeah. Before you get started though, I do want to wish you a happy
I knew you were
birthday.
gonna do that. I knew. I was driving this morning, and I was like, "You are not gonna let me get away with this."
No, absolutely not. Yes, it is Jared's birthday today.
You're like one of three people outside my family
That knows?
that know my birthday. So, Colin, you can sing happy birthday now or after the show. It's really up to
Well,
you.
why don't we'll put a pin in that and we'll do it a little later. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Got it. Okay, Colin, let's jump into it. Okay, you're a publicly traded company that's producing a product that's going to be bought by farmers. So, I really want to just kick off the interview with an overview of the company, because there's going to be a lot of people from different industries watching. We actually have a quite strong agriculture audience that has just kind of consistently grown. So can you just kick us off? First of all, thank you for being here. The birthday thing threw me off. Um, but
Thanks, Kieran.
could you just talk about who the company is, and then we're going to dive into a lot of different elements of it.
Yeah, well, good morning and thanks for having me on. So your question is an interesting one because there first of all, there's lots of ag and ag technology companies, but there's not very many publicly traded ones, and I will get into that. But what Clean Seed is, it really started out was an R&D technology company focused on really disrupting agriculture, bringing technology that could essentially make improvements to crop yields, reduce costs for producers, or make it transparent in terms of the use of data, which is being collected at a huge rate in agriculture today. So Clean Seed is a Canadian company. We started out privately with our founder and our founder's family, and then it did go. We did take it public for a number of different reasons. But we've now produced over the last several years really a complete integrated commercial product, a digital planting and seeding technology. And we're just moving from that R&D phase, commercialization stage. And we've made big investments in people, facilities, manufacturing, and a huge portfolio in intellectual property worldwide. So, again, it all takes is that idea, but it takes a strong capitalization available in the public markets here that have really propelled us to this point. So, we are based out of Burnaby in British Columbia, which is just outside of Vancouver. But really, our heart of our operations is in Western Canada, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where I live, and really connecting with farmers on a daily basis. So, we'll unpack, our newest product, the Smart Seeder Max and Max S products, and tell you a little bit about what they do. But as a company, we've got out of that sandbox finally, that R&D, which some investors, they love those multiples when they do jump. But we're now heading full tilt on the commercialization, the sales, the distribution side, and to really find a way to really keep our production demand up with what the customers are asking, both in Canada, the United States, and around the world. So it's it's a big balancing act, but we've recently beefed up our team, especially our executive management team, and this doesn't preclude doing more than organic growth. We're actually geared up for stuff on the mergers and acquisition side as well. So there's a lot going on at Clean Seed. We are on the junior exchange in the TSX Venture, and we're pretty tightly held company. So a lot of farmer investors have really invested in our technology. They've been following us for literally 5 to 8 years, and seeing the evolution of our technology.
You're going to have to pardon some pretty basic questions here, but I think they're key information to cover. When you mentioned just at the end there that farmers are invested, what is that draw from the farming community to essentially back a company like yours? And I want to preface that question because you are going into production, and these you've moved beyond that R&D stage. At this point now, what are the farmers looking to get back besides investment, but in that actual product, and dovetailing that into the smart seed?
Yeah, I think most of our farmers are more invested in the technology and wanting to see that rolled out as quickly as possible. So, farming is a hugely capital intense business. It involves a lot of equipment, a lot of operational input costs in a year, and all of it essentially is depending on your soil and really the weather. Do you have enough rainfall and heat units to grow a crop? And to get that off. And we have to do that, especially in Canada, in 120 frost-free days. So it's a big, risky industry. So there's been kind of two models in farming that have been, this is decades in the making here. But either you find a way to spread, that really high capital cost across, way more acres. So you purchase more land, farmland that's for sale. You rent more land from your neighbors. And you spread those capital costs out to reduce your cost per acre on any given crop. Well, things been happening, especially the last 20 years, but even in the last 5 years, farmland prices, both on rent and purchase, have gone up to the point where it's getting really tough to justify going out and buying another 1,000 acres of land. So in Western Canada, for instance, we might have a farm that is a 3 to 5,000 acre a farm, which is a very good medium size farm for Western Canada, and they would produce a whole host of crops here. But that option to rent land or to buy land within your surrounding area, and you remember is these farmers are looking to get these within a select geographic area because these assets are not easily deployable. They're slow moving equipment. There's timing aspects that have to happen. There's obviously good and bad land out here. So if that one business model of buying more land isn't available, now we kind of turn to where ag technology is starting to play a role. Is if you have the same fixed base of land, you essentially have to find ways of growing more yield of every crop, reduce those costs if you can, and then obviously doing it in a sustainable manner that you can do this over and over again. So the farmers who are investors in Clean Seed, I would say are probably this latter type of investor. They're looking for ways, and they've been following us closely. They follow all technology and agriculture very closely, but essentially they're looking for ways to grow more with less, and that's through technology. It's through precision placement of products, and it all starts with planting a seed in the ground, and that's exactly where Clean Seed and the Smart Seeder Max have focused kind of our disruptive nature on here to give those farmers those two options of growing more with less inputs.
I promise the audience I'm not doing just a teaser to delay the smart talking about the smart seeder, but just going back to something that you said is the company started out in that R&D technology space, and now has this Cedar Max. So was that did the Cedar Max, the demand to actually develop this commercialized physical product, did that come out of that, or was that sort of, do you know, was that sort of part of the long-term plan to eventually develop something of this scale?
Yeah, so there's two kind of, I'll back up a little bit. There's two kind of mainstay planting and seeding technologies around the world. One is called an air seeder, and essentially it comes from a large trailer cart that is pulled, and what it does is it drops seed and fertilizer into large airstreams, and these airstreams split out like spaghetti across the machine, and they go into the ground anywhere from 7 to 15 inches apart. And air does not divide evenly, and it divides randomly. But air seeders were very efficient one-pass machines that could go across the field, cover a lot of acres in there. But the issue is farmers didn't really know where that product was going. They were hoping it was going almost in an equal amount of space on there. But again, that's the prevalent. I'd say that's 98% of what you see across the Canadian prairies, the Midwest or the Northwest plains in the U.S. on there. The other part, big technology is planting technology. You see these planters, and you see these prevalent. You see them in the John Deere photos. You see them, Wall Street that will profile these farms, and they're a lot more compact than air seeders, but their only role is really to put seed down, and fertility is put down differently. They actually place something called singulation, where they pick up one seed at a time and place it at a prescribed depth and pressure into the soil. Now the downfall of planting technologies is essentially they can't do fertility in the same pass. So even though you're putting a seed down, what they're doing is they're kind of throwing the fertility and hoping that the seed then gets more or less what it needs to grow through the growing season.
Right.
So these two technologies, one has been more the Midwest in the U.S. based and around the world, where we have what we call row crops, and then this broadacre agriculture that we have, Western Canada, Montana, North Dakota, all the way down through Texas, is more this air seeder technology where they're not, I would say, the highest value crops, but they're designed to be grown in usually small grains, oil seeds, pulse crops on there. So these two technologies that have been around literally 50, 70 years in a lot of cases, they have extreme limitations, but there hasn't been a different type of technology that could address the two limitations of them. One, air seeders are just not precise, which is what we have in Western Canada. In fact, some great seeding companies are being built out of Western Canada. And then the planting technology out of the US, these are the John Deeres, these are the Case IHs, these are the Kinseys of the world that have put out these planters. It's a big business. Just planters alone in the US is $4 to $5 billion market per year.
Wow.
But they can't do fertility. So they're only doing half the equation. So you have one that's doing all the equation but not well, and you got the other one that is doing half the equation very well, but really completely ignoring placement of fertility, which has huge sustainability and operational impacts for those farms in the U.S. So getting back to your original question is, what drove you there? Well, if we look at our company's founder, Graham Lapierre, his father started saying, look, there's a better way to do this than instead of air distribution. They looked at pioneering electric stepper motor metering, which is a different type of electric motor over top of every row. That made us almost like a printer. The other part of it is he changed the way he engaged in the ground, so you could put seed very, very easily, along with fertility, along with some soil functionality. We wanted to shatter the soil as we go through it, which created a very fluffy, aerated bed of soil, almost like you find in your mother's garden
Yeah.
or that. But so the technology really drove from inadequacies in the planting and seeding world to what we could do with some of the technologies. And this hasn't been an overnight success. We often joke this has been a one of these 10-year overnight successes for clean
That's
seed, but
right.
it's
Yeah.
actually gone on way longer than that. So the evolution of this technology, even goes back to the early 2000s, even the 90s, when our CEO's father spoke in front of the U.S. Senate on sustainability in soil and soil conservation. So
Well, let's try to jump into the actual the smart seeder. Your so there's a couple models, and I'm going to let you sort of approach it because I don't think I don't think my questions are going to set you up any better. So I'm just going to throw it over to you. Can
sure.
you talk about some of the different components? And I know you've already touched on them, but can you just sort of outline the sort of the technical aspects of the seeder?
So the Smart Seeder Max and Max S, and I'll dive into it. We're based around kind of three value propositions, and I've touched on a little bit on them. And again, this was to design a whole new class of planting and seeding technology. The first is that we change the way we engage in the ground, and I'll explain that in a second. The second is we talk about that metering technology, which both planters and seeders have some significant challenges on. And the third and you've heard this, as other companies have gone public, and you hear technology is data is in agriculture. This data is everywhere. We're collecting all this data. Well, it's kind of a fun fact that especially the guys in agriculture, yeah, it's great to collect data, but what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of data gathering platforms, that GIS platforms that basically consolidate this data. But in terms of analytics, is one part of it. Is what does it mean? And then the second part is there something you can actually do with it? And so we focused on being able to take that data and make it actionable with the Smart Seeder Max. So there's two kind of commercial models that we've rolled out. One is called the Smart Seeder Max, and the other one is called the Smart Seeder Max S. And the only differentiation is the Smart Seeder Max S has singulation as well as what we call volumetric seeding. So we pioneered really electric stepper motor metering technology over top of each row. And so the Smart Seeder Max has 4 of those meters per row. So if you think about a 60-foot wide machine, which is an average size machine, especially in the prairies here in Canada, Saskatchewan, on here. It sounds maybe big to if you're in downtown a city somewhere, but it is a kind of an average size machine. Now that machine has 60 rows. That means we're on 12-inch spacing. Each one of those rows has 4 volumetric meters on. So if you do the math on this, 60 times 4, we have 240 electric motors that essentially become a giant printer for 4 independent volumetric products. So now the first thing we have is now we don't have that randomness that air is distributing. We're literally like a giant printer across the field. If you just think about your inkjet or your laser printer that prints that picture on there, they all come from dots of ink, and that's essentially what we're doing across the field. Now the S adds something that the planters have, which is singulation, the ability to pick up one seed at a time. So we take that Smart Seeder Max, which is the 4 volumetric products, and we change it. We actually add what we call singulation meter, the ability in canola, corn, soybeans to pick up one seed at a time and put that in the ground one at a time. And whatever plant population that your farm, your soil type, your agronomist, or your data dictates that you want to put it down there. So now what we've done is we've taken the best of what we call the air seeder technologies, which were really efficient one-pass machines that could put fertility down, but we're doing it on a foot-by-foot basis. And we took what planters did well, which was the singulation part of it, and the ability to put one seed at the time in the ground. And we've combined those technologies on the metering side. So first of all, that's never been done at this precision level. So the industry is really excited to see us commercialize this, because that's a huge part of the value proposition. Because anytime you can limit seeds, and seeds are very expensive, and maybe you buy it in your garden, you get a small pack of seeds which might have 20 or 50 seeds in it, and it's you pay $5 for it, and you think, well, that's not bad. Well, imagine putting that not just in your little garden box, but essentially over 5,000 acres. Just for the math, is a half mile by a half mile. That's 160 acres, as we call that, a quarter section in agriculture. So seed costs are hugely expensive, and if you can limit them in terms of the amount you have to put in the soil by putting them optimally in the soil, it's a huge saving. Canola is a huge crop we have in Western Canada, northern US as well. And canola has kind of recently hit a huge high on a commercial basis, just because of the oil content. We've had new facilities being built here for crushing capability, but one bushel of canola is now is over $20 Canadian per bushel. Now, just for reference, it came from about $11 a year ago. So we've almost doubled that commodity on here. But the price of canola seed, just think about how much a pound weighs, can be over $15 to $17 per pound. And most farmers with air seeders would need to put 4 to 5 pounds per acre. So if you can save a farmer on seed costs and grow the same yield of crop, 45 to $60 in seed costs per acre, now we're almost talking about what the margin they're used to making. So only one technology with singulation and the ability to put seeds down at a prescribed rate saves farmers money. And that's not even to talk about the yield side, but that's just the saving side. So that's what the Smart Seeder Max and Max S do. The S has a singulation. The Max is designed to be a price point machine, really to compete against that air seeder market. So the S is a premium machine. The Max is more of our entry level machine, designed to get a price point more similar to the air seeder competitors that are out there in the market. So metering has been a big part of what we do. The next part is we change the way we engage the ground. Air seeders and planters have been doing really the same thing for years and years and years, and they're not ideal to put seeds in the ground, and they're not ideal necessarily to put fertility with those seeds. So our opener technology, our DX opener, we really invented a new way of doing it, and it's under one of our patents. Is we have a big saw blade essentially at the front of each row that cuts through trash. And why that's important is when you harvest a crop, there's a lot of material that just gets flung out the back of a combine. And if you imagine cutting your grass on those heavy days where you waited a little bit too long, and now there's grass everywhere on top. Well, that's essentially what a big yield on from a harvest does. And what you would do is you would seed right into that traditionally. Now, most planters and seeders can't do that. They require almost that analogy of mowing your grass, where you have to mow it twice before it looks nice. Well, we do the same thing in agriculture, is because our seeders, to place a single little tiny seed that would fit in your hand at an optimal depth in the soil, well, all that material kind of gets mixed in there. So that's very tough to go through. Well, our opener technology was really designed to cut and part that organic matter and put that seed at an optimal seeding depth. So that was an exciting advent of there. And that opening technology does a couple things. One is it allows us to go across a field that's either unconditioned or relatively unconditioned, unlike what planters and air seeders need. The second part of it is by preserving that organic matter, we get into something which I know you're going to talk about a lot of your subscribers, which is carbon sequestration. There's a fun fact that we talk about no-till seeding and your minimum tillage seeding, and if you think about the two things, is if you see soils that are black that you're driving by on the highway, those would be zero tillage, and they're not a very sustainable way of doing things anymore. Those are the things that brought on the dirty 30s and the soil blowing across the landscape. Well, especially farmers in Canada have moved to more of a minimum tillage environment. But every time that we break up the organic matter and make it black, we actually lose organic matter. The
Mm.
second we lose organic matter, we lose that soil's ability to sink carbon and carbon dioxide into the soils, which play a huge role in meeting our climate our climate goals for that. So the ability to limit the passes and do everything in a single pass is going to build organic matter. And for instance, a 1% increase in organic matter. So if you think about, most soils are probably between zero, which is that black one, and a heavy one, you might be, 10, 11, 12%. Every 1% gain in organic matter across a field will essentially sequester an extra 20 tons of carbon per acre. So it's fairly significant. It's almost more significant than anything else we do, in terms of automobile or electrification. Agriculture plays a huge role and it's been understated. And technologies that can, give you crop growth, yield savings, and sustainability, which is carbon sequestration. That's a huge advent on there, especially now that there's carbon markets that are willing to pay farmers for those things.
Mm.
There's a lot there. I wouldn't get into some of the ability to manage foot by foot, but the Smart Seeder Max and Access are really game changing digital planting and seeding technologies. We do things differently than they've been done before, and we've been out in the field proving these technologies out for a long time. And we're very happy that we're heading into our first order program here at the end of May.
What about research, Colin? I mean, there must have been, like you said, a 10-year overnight success. I mean, and I've obviously spent some time looking at your technology. I mean, it's obvious you're not kicking this off in 2019 and have this amazing product in 2020. It's just too high level. But um, over the years now, have you done research to show the efficiency and the comparable to the top model seeder compared to what your yield is getting, like those kind of stats? Has that research been done?
Yeah, I mean, we've done portions of that. In the early days, I'd say, more than a decade ago, we had UBC in British Columbia actually do a study here on our ability to sequester carbon and go through preserve organic matter with our opener that was on there. We've done a lot of in-house research, and we're just starting a lot of side-by-side trials. So the technology you talk about used to be really, or the tests you talk about are really have been prevalent in agriculture take a long time. And if you think about it, is
Yeah.
in a 12-month cycle, especially in Canada here, we grow one crop a year and we take off one crop a year. So you have to, even as an R&D company, you have to deploy your assets quickly in
Mm,
order to get
yeah.
the research. So we've got some great anecdotal stuff. We've got some good numbers out here, which has allowed us to proceed to commercialization here, and you're going to see a lot more of that in the future. But individual components there, we've tested things like seed safety. We're not blowing it out at 100 mile a seed out 100 miles an hour, and when that seed hits the soil, it can crack or it hits the sidewall of the hose it's running through. When you fracture a seed, it inhibits its ability to germinate. And again, that speaks to the high cost of seed is you have to put more to compensate for some of that damage to seed. Now our system on the Smart Seeder Max and Max S is designed to be very gentle. So you know, there's there's other savings that are really hard to quantify, and people aren't measuring because they just don't want to talk about how bad their product does at these things. So there'll be a
Right.
lot more to come, but we're going to be doing some side by sides here this year, and already the farmers are saying they're pretty dramatic what they're seeing in the early stages, even just in that early emergence. So,
I want to move it a little bit into the team aspect of it, and one thing that is coming to mind is to build something, a true disruptive technology. How much of it is, I mean, the actual farmer who actually hold seeds in their hand, like they're these salt of the earth people that have actually done the farming for years, and their families, and that input from them, but also people, engineers and scientists, and these types of people that maybe haven't actually worked on a farm. How much collaboration does it take to actually get something like this off the ground?
Oh wow, that is a big question. So I'll start with the probably the worst thing it's been in my career is the worst thing you can do is lock engineers up in a room and say come up with the next best product when it's undirected. It's not going to a common purpose. They'll come up with really cool things,
Yeah.
but either they won't be practical or they're going to miss the mark of what the market is actually looking for. So to answer your question, even early on as we went through some of our what we call our proof of concept machines, our CX6 Smart Seeder, was a precursor to the Smart Seeder Max. There were some things we missed on the mark on because we were a very small team at the time, and we kind of allowed some engineers a little bit of a more of a runway to finish up the projects.
Mm,
Um, so heading into the Smart Seeder Max, we actually started to say, okay, before we build this final commercial machine, we're going to do a really exhaustive survey. And what we did is we took what we call the early adopters, the innovators, that initial subset of farmers that said, look, they want to grow a better crop. They're not interested in just buying land and picking up more acres. They want to get more per acre out of there. So we did a survey of them, and we asked them everything from, okay, well, do you want singulation? Is that a value? It's a very expensive thing to put onto a machine, but if you want it as an option, we'll bring it to you. How many pounds of product do you want to do? Like we know what current agriculture is asking for in terms of nutrient ability to put them down in a single pass. But what about other products? So we did this exhaustive survey on there, and that formed the basis. Even the size of the machine, the spacing, and the options that we eventually built into the Smart Seeder Max were all driven from the farmer side. So to start on your question, it's really that has to be your start. Is you have to know who you're building a product for. It kind of frustrates me and a lot of people being in agriculture a long time like myself is there's a lot of technology flying out. In fact, there's a lot of technology companies that want to get into agriculture because it's kind of hot right now, and they have some interesting technologies, but they don't know farmers. They don't know what a farmer would buy, why they would buy it.
yeah.
They don't know the cycles and the trials and tribulations of that farming cycle. And although, I often say to our team is saying, look, just because we can do something really cool technology wise, it doesn't mean we should. We have to get back to the value proposition. Is
Yeah.
it either helping a farmer grow more crop, or is it reducing costs, or does it has something to do with improving the sustainability? Really, those three key goals of what drives clean seed and our technology. So yeah, it is a very inclusive thing, and it's not a short process, especially with a very complex machine like we have that's designed to work very easily. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that was a great answer to a question and it's we see it even in our business where we can I mean, because we're always looking for new ways to get exposure and build a show, but we always have to be paying attention to our guests and and our audience, because you can have this great idea to showcase a technology, and if it doesn't fit in with what people can sort of engage with, you can end up running all over the place and wasting a lot of time. Is that the big as a challenge for a company, I mean, what is the major hurdle when you're getting? I mean, you went public, you're developing the technology, the different seasons, like you said, you have these short windows where you can actually test. I mean, what is the big challenge that sort of can the roadblocks that come up when you're trying to bring something like this into the industry?
well, I'll compare it to a different industry. If you look at whether it's mining, whether it's automotive, whether it's any of these other industries, even software and phone hardware, is these are not a seasonal business. They can be testing all year long. You can do product cycle after product cycle in a short window, and you have access to the masses. And it's not what I would call a really capital intensive thing to get things out. So if you look at the decades following, really precluding the 50 years, is innovation was often designed by farmers on out here. Is a farmer would come up with what we call the better mousetrap.
Mm.
And then eventually maybe they would get a meeting with a company like John Deere or Case IH or Agco, and that idea would develop into a product over a long period of time. But the issue with agriculture and ag technology is you got to think about this is you know just in Canada alone, like we Western Canada alone, we've got 90 million acres. So one is you have to be able to test in a wide variety of soils. So now
Yeah.
you've got limitations in just how do you get out and make sure your product works everywhere. So that's the first part of it, and then the cost of doing that. And then you got to remember is you got to reset every 12 months. So if you miss a window, now you've incurred a whole nother 12 months of cost. So getting back to your question is capital. Agriculture has not been what I call really until recently I really call a high return business in ag technology. There was a lot of companies out here that went public. They made great claims. They said, "Oh, we've got millions of acres here," but they never were profitable. And now that's starting to change as both the investment side of things. Investors look at saying, "Well, I think there is returns here," and then the farmers are actually looking at adopting the technology, which is the other thing is they're speeding up the adoption of technology as they look at more opportunities to increase their profit margins. So, one of the big barriers of entry in agriculture technology, other than on the data side, which is, yeah, that's a computer, that's a few sensors. If you were going to change things, it was a hugely capital intensive thing. And here's the thing is it wasn't what I call sexy industry. It wasn't something that, people said, oh, this is a blockchain thing, or this is a cannabis deal out there, or a mining deal in its day. Agriculture is always kind of that ugly cousin out there. But I think, as we look at people more and more paying attention to the transparency of where food is grown, do I have a local food supply? How is it grown? What about the farm it came from? Where did that beef come from? Where did that grain that made my bread come from? This is changing. So a lot of it's being consumer driven, and now the technology is helping tie the consumer back to the farmer on the ground. But again, the blockade for us, even in the early days, was this isn't something you go lightly into. It's not something you fund out of out of your $100,000 bank account or RSP. This isn't a big undertaking with a large team that you have to be in for the long haul in order to really reach the end of getting into the commercialization piece.
Let's talk about the team, Colin, because and when you as you're going through this interview, I'm thinking, man, I've done enough of the technology shows to know, and I get to have conversations sometimes with people off the air, so I know what they've been through to get it to commercialization. I mean, I'm sure there's been a season that you were supposed to test and it's been missed that year, so it got delayed a year. I mean, it must be. I'm going to make an assumption in my question. It must be a very positive team, but a very goal-oriented team at the same time, which is a very hard group to put together. To be able to get something like this across the finish line, it really must be.
Yeah, I mean, and there's two forms of that. There's our board of directors, which does have a lot of our management team on it, but some great contributors from around the industry and in the M&A space that keep us funding and also are getting us ready to be funded for our next steps in the company. But I'll kind of start with the management team. My background has been in ag equipment, ag technology for the last 25 years. I grew up on a farm here in Saskatchewan, and that's been my driver is to really roll out innovative equipment to farmers as per their needs. So I've taken that role and to try to refine what both our messages and making sure that we're aligned on the producer side, while getting the product ready. If you look at our CEO, our founder and CEO, Graham Career, he's got amazing understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, what his dad actually started to accomplish here, and has been a master. And I've never seen anybody better here at keeping us funded through the sandbox stage, which is there's a lot of companies that don't get the really the passes in the market, especially if you're publicly traded. For okay, when are you going to generate cash flow? When are you going to be into revenue? But he's been great. And if you look at every single placement that he's put out there, he's raised it above market and above market pricing in the market, which is tremendous. So he has a way when he sits down with those investors to say, hey, we have something more here. This isn't a flash in the pan. This is a sustainable thing. You know, we believe we're a hugely undervalued company, and we just haven't had that reach yet to the investor market, and we're just at the commercialization stage. So he's been a huge partner for me. As I work on the operations, and he works on the marketing and the capital and the strategy side. So that's been great. Gary Anderson, who serves as our president, another huge asset. Gary was really the co-founder of a company called AGI, Ag Growth International. It started out as a $2 million business in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, and really for the next 20 years, they did about 25 mergers. They were essentially the fish swallowing the whale in what we call the grain handling business and the grain storage business. And Gary, when he retired as the CEO of Ag Growth International in 2016, that company was over $1 billion a year. So we look at people that are being veterans in the industry, veterans of knowing what it takes to take a company organically, that maybe see as the outlier. That, well, how can that small fish really get out there? So both Gary and Graham and myself are on the board. We've got excellent outside advisors. Glenn Radcliffe, who's was a key agriculture equity guy with Raymond James. So again, we're positioning to tap those equity markets through there. We've got Bob Trugel, who is AMVAC, American Vanguard, huge role here in plant crop protection products, as well as just in ag technology. And the list goes on and on, including Steve Sommerfeld, who worked with Gary Anderson at Ag Growth International, really was the money guy. I don't think there's a guy he doesn't know in the debt financing side related to agriculture, really in North America, and even around the world. So, it's funny, people say, well, where did you get your team from? And the issue is well, this is this slow burn that we've talked about in agriculture. Is if we have a product we believe in, we know it's going to be really disruptive. It's amazing the talent that you can attract to help bring this on. And it started one person at the time. Graham often reminds me, hey, when it was just myself and my wife, and we had one employee, and I think there was a basketball net in the back of our Burnaby office, and a pallet jack. And it all started from somewhere. But we built the team up, and I came on as we saw. I had been a huge advocate. I'd worked for John Deere, worked for CNH Industrial, and I saw how slow true innovation moved in those companies to really change those two things, which is growing more crop or doing it at a lower cost. And it was key that you had to tie the capital to that innovation and people who believed in it. So we've added now operational staff. Gigi, who's our vice president of operations and product development, huge background in automotive lean manufacturing, agriculture lean manufacturing, and product development. Butch Sinclair, a veteran of Viterra, and he brings out really a whole new push on the customer experience. And we've titled his thing. He's not just the vice president of sales, but he's also the vice president of customer experience. So we're pushing out this end-to-end thing. Is we don't want to just sell a product. We want to change the way that this is looked at. We want it as an agronomic tool that people have a good customer experience with, and that's how we've developed our companies, by keeping our eye on that ball of why are we doing this in the first place. So.
It's and I've watched some of your presentations, and you kind of circled. You said about agriculture as I forget what you said. It's the dirty cousin or something. I forget what the
Yeah.
term you used was.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, because even when Rory first brought your company to me, I looked at it and went, oh, okay, it's a cedar. And and then because I get so many that I can't. I spend a couple minutes looking. I look at about page and then I move on. And then when I went back, see, there's a real interest here. I go back and I look again, and I'm going, oh wow, this is this is not what I thought it was at all. Do you run into a lot of that, even
all,
from both from
all
the farmer side and the investor side?
all the time, and we've been, it's funny, even in the days, and hey, could you just put the words in your presentation that it does blockchain and we'll seed cannabis or marijuana, and we'll it'll run
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing those cursory glances people invest. There's not that many what I call the detailed investors, but this is also why we have a very tightly held group. If you look at the insider and just the farmers who know our technology, they've been looking for this technology to get around their existing limitations. About 70% of our stock is very little is institutional, but we know that will change as we grow. But we so if you look at what's traded in a day on it, we're almost a privately held, publicly traded company. But part of it is getting our pitch down. People want they want give me the 30-second pitch, which says why this is the next iPhone or whatever, and it's hard because if you don't have an understanding of the challenges in agriculture and some of the solutions and all the impacts. It's really tough to understand, and that's why as we talked about on your show, is we want to educate producers about why this is different than just another technology play. What we're trying to do on here. We've had discussions with all of the major ag equipment and ag technology companies in the world, and at some shape or fashion in the last 8 years, they've all had discussions with us. But again, this isn't a Silicon Valley where they're ready to write you a check. And
Mhm.
and we've made a concerted effort to say, look, we're going to bring this technology out. We don't want it on a shelf that when you need it, when your tooling is expired on the exact thing, almost that automotive model is,
Yeah.
you know, you have to drag them kicking and screaming to bring innovation in here, which is why I think Tesla and those companies that have moved very quickly have had such high returns because they've really disrupted the innovation cycle. Well, we're doing the same on the agriculture side, although it's a smaller audience. So we have to talk to our investors in a little bit more informed manner than just that general automotive type of discussion. So
Well, the one thing that I will say, and I mean, I would say, I don't know how many times in a week we get people going, really, an hour show? Um, and but the one thing that I stick to my guns to is, and you will, I mean, we siphon off a lot of companies that won't come on just for this pure reason, is they go, oh, it's an hour. I don't have enough. There's not enough teeth in what I'm bringing to talk for an hour. I've got maybe 10 minutes and then we're done. And so I think from my perspective, and I think to a lot of viewers, just the fact that you can come on to a show like this and actually unpack the technology, the industry, the leadership, the outlook. Um, when you can actually do that, I think it says a lot for where the company's going. And then I think there must be an advantage to you as well. In that, and I'm saying this as a statement, but I mean it as a question. There must be an advantage that there is a technology and major hardware component to this, because, like you said earlier, there's a lot of companies. They have. I'm going to call it gadget technology. It's not heavy duty. It's not an industry changer. It's like an industry enhancer. So I could see that being it's a little bit more of a has more impact, so it might be a little bit tougher to get across the line, but it also must give you a competitive advantage because there's not going to be many companies that are going to make the investment that you've made. Am I in the right direction there?
oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'll go back to the automotive analogy. Look at how many companies, competitor companies, share engines, right?
Yeah.
Oh well, that's a Mercedes engine, in this model kind of thing. So you could call us the silly company, but what we did is most seeding and planting companies out there, and even all the technology companies, they'll use third-party software because they're good at manufacturing iron,
Yeah.
in ground engaging or hydraulics and that, but they're really technology dependent on third parties. What we've done at Clean Seed here is everything from the ground engaging components, the piece that puts the seed in the ground, up through the frame of the machine, up through the metering technology, the electric motors, up to the circuit boards and the software that controls the circuit boards and the user interface are all in-house to CleanSeed. We took all of our vast knowledge here of what the customers wanted and what are the limitations in the industry. And what we've done is there's not a piece on the equipment that we're beholden to really a third party vendor. Everything is a CleanSeed piece. And that scares a lot of competition that says, oh, wow, like this is a pretty small team, especially of their engineering and development staff. How is it possible? We did one piece. We did one thing. We did an app or an opener, and look, we have 100 people. Well, we've got a clean seat proper, and not including some of our manufacturing partner, but we've got about 18 people in the company, and most of those are on the technical side, and we're just building up the sales and operations side of it here. So for us to produce that in a short period of time, all in is huge. And us not being beholden to supply chains of where
Yeah.
large competitors could roll over us by saying, well, we're not going to give you the latest technology, which does happen, and it happens in the phone industry. Like if you look at Apple and Samsung and Android, in the chips they use and the cameras they use. But we decided not to be beholden to everybody. It's taken us longer to get here.
Yeah.
But what's happening is we're about ready to release innovation, and also we've just started our licensing deal to license our technology and our intellectual property. And American Vanguard AMVAC was the first to license some of our technology just a year ago. And we could have got more, but it was a very friendly licensing and royalty deal that'll continue for a long time. But it brings that additional revenue into the company as we develop our intellectual property. So.
Colin, thanks for coming on the show. It's just fun to do these types of episodes. I'm a bit of a nuts and bolts guy, so for me, it's exciting to see because like I said, we could have every second episode could be a technology, going back to that gadget technology. It could be the whole show. And there are shows like that. So it's good to have you on and actually talk about, something that's heavy duty, a real industry changer. I hope within a year or so you can come back on and sort of show those stages, because it's obvious that that 10 years to be an overnight success. I think the next 10 years are going to be pretty exciting. So thank you for coming on.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Gowdy. And no, we're going full tilt here, and I think people say, are we going to do it? And just watch us. It's going to be pretty exciting, especially the next 12 months.
Well, you're going to have a few people watching after this episode. So thank you, Colin.
That's great. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Gowdy.
Okay. Well, Gowdy, where can people go to like, follow, subscribe? We're going to have a lot of agriculture people watching this episode. So if you want to get on the show, let us know. Where can everybody get in touch with us, Gowdy?
Yes, contact us, info@crownsman.com, if you want to be part of the show. And if you'd like to recommend someone to be on the show, that's also, again, contact us, info@crownsman.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got 2 episodes a week on there, and more to come. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, so that you don't miss a single episode.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gowdy. And we will get Colin back on for my birthday next year so that he can fall through with his promise to sing. Thank you very much, everybody. See you on the next episode of The Crownsman Show. We'll have plenty of links to Clean Seed in the episode, in the description and everything. You'll be able to find them. There'll be lots of tagging on LinkedIn. Keep following, keep talking, and keep being part of the voice of industry.